Welcome back. We are in 1 Samuel chapter 16. I'm posting all these videos. I have it on YouTube from chapter 15 from last week, but I don't think I have it here yet. So I'll get tonight's and last week's on the actual website. But it's on YouTube. It's already got some looks, some views. So anyway, last week we talked about the fact that Saul, well, first of all, let's go back a little bit. That Israel wanted a king, and they said, yeah, we want a king. And the prophet Samuel was like, no, you don't need a king. We have God. He's our king. They said, no, yeah, God's our king, but we want a king that we can high five and give him, great parades and all sorts of cool stuff. We want a king, And Samuel said, you don't need a king. You got God. And they said, no, we want a king. And God said, I'll give him a king. So pick Saul. Saul becomes king. And at first, Saul actually does some cool stuff. And they're like, yeah, all right, this is going to be great. And very quickly, Saul becomes power hungry and selfish and does things for himself. And so we quickly see his popularity and his character and his morality just crumbling and falling down. So we see last week in chapter 15 that God commanded them, go take over those bad people over there. Go take them out. Kill the women, the children, the men, the boys, the dogs, the sheep, everything. Get rid of them because they're all bad. I want them out of here. Well, Saul led the attack, led the charge, and he killed all of them except for the king. He kind of brought the king back as a ransom. It's like, well, hey, we got rid of everybody. We utterly destroyed them. This is the words he used. We utterly destroyed them, except for the king. We saved him, and so that way we can say, hey, look, we killed all your people. And Samuel was like, God didn't say kill everybody except the king. He said, kill everybody. And then we also see that God said, kill all the sheep, all the goats, all the cows, everything. And they killed all the lame, spotted, striped, whatever, and they brought the best ones back. And they said, oh, yeah, we brought them back because we're gonna sacrifice to you, God. It's going to be great. And Samuel said, God didn't ask for that. God said, get rid of them. And then Saul, who's high on his horse, decides, I'm going to go ahead and go up on this mountain over here. No one told me to do this. I'm going to go on this mountain over here, and I'm going to create a new monument for me because I beat these bad guys, even though he didn't do what God told him to do. And so Samuel, who's the prophet, he's like the head pastor, the head preacher, or whatever of Israel. He says, "You're doing some really stupid stuff. You're making really bad choices here." And so finally, he goes, "Bring the king before me." So we're in chapter 15, verse 33, real quick, and he says, as your sword has made women childless, so will your mother be childless among women. And Samuel hacked the king of the Amalekites, Agag, into pieces before the Lord in Gilgal. And then Samuel went to Ramah, and Saul went up to his house to Gibeah of Saul. And now Samuel did not see Saul up to the day of his death, but Samuel mourned for Saul, and the Lord regretted that he made Saul king over Israel. So we see here, this is where they split. They said, you know what? I'm the prophet of the nation of Israel, but I'm done. I'm done dealing with you. I'm not going to play this game anymore. And Saul never interacted with him ever again. So what happens if you're already a person of questionable morals, questionable choices in your life, and you get further away from God, what's going to happen? Are you going to be better or are you going to be worse? Yeah, you're going to be worse. So chapter 16, let's see what happens here. Uh-oh, my marker fell. Put my markers up here. Oh, by the way, I'm gonna write this on here real quick, just so we can see what's happening. So we're gonna write a bunch of names today as we go through here. All right, so 1 Samuel chapter 16. All right. The Lord said to Samuel, so God is still talking with Samuel, the head guy over the church. So that connection's still happening. The Lord said to Samuel, how long will you mourn for Saul, since I have rejected him from ruling over Israel? Like, How long are you going to be sad? Yeah, he was the king, and now he's a terrible guy. But how long are you going to whine and cry about that? Get up, man. What are you doing? Let's go. Fill your horn with oil and go. I will send you to Jesse the Bethlehemite, for I have chosen a king for myself from among his sons. So, we have, who do we have here? We have God up at the top, and he's talking to Samuel, right? And Samuel's the prophet over the nation of Israel. And so he says, go to Jesse the Bethlehemite. So Samuel is supposed to go see Jesse. Now, Jesse, the Bethlehemite, where do you think he's from? Bethlehem. That's correct. And what do we know about Bethlehem? Where Jesus was born. Okay. So you see this connection. We see this connection 3,000 years later. Hey, that's where Jesus was born. When they wrote this, when this was happening, Jesus hadn't come yet. So Jesse the Bethlehemite was just some dude in some town.
Make Samuel king?
Because Samuel didn't want to be king.
Oh, okay.
Samuel wanted to just worship God. He didn't want to be in charge of the people. He just wanted to worship God and help others worship God. That's a good question. Yeah, you're thinking to yourself, well, if Saul's so bad and Samuel's so good, why didn't Samuel just take over? Yeah. But he didn't want to take over. He wanted to just worship God. And he wasn't called by God. That's what you have your calling on your life. Some people are called to work with children. Some people are called to work with cars. Some people are called to do different things. I'm not called to work on cars. I don't have that kind of patience. I'm turning a wrench and my knuckles get tore up and I start getting mad and I start letting bad words come out of my mouth. All right? I'm not made for that. That doesn't mean I can never do it. It just means that's not what I'm made to do. Now, you want me to go talk to people? You want me to go sell something? Let's go. But there are other people who I don't want to sell anything to anybody at any time, ever in my life. And that's okay too. Like, we all have different things, right? That's a great question. So here we are in chapter 16, verse 2. Samuel said, I want you to see the subtext here. Samuel said, how can I go? Like, how can I go? Not how can I walk, but how can I go? If Saul hears what I'm going to do, the dude's going to kill me. Right? Because what did God tell him to do back in verse 1? Fill your horn with oil and go, and I will send you to Jesse the Bethlehemite, for I have chosen a king for myself from among his sons. So he is telling Samuel, go to Jesse and his sons, and we're going to have a king. All right? I'm going to label a king from those sons. But here's the deal. If Saul finds out what Samuel's doing, what do you think's going to happen to Samuel? Yeah. Saul's not really okay with people just going and, becoming new kings, like that. I'm the king. You don't go in there and try to mess with me being the king. Okay? So that's verse 2, and it continues. Chapter 16, verse 2, it says, and the Lord said, take a heifer with you. Take a cow, okay? And say, I have come to sacrifice to the Lord. So he didn't go, his main narrative, or what he's telling people, is I'm not going to make a new king. I'm going to go worship. I'm going to go slaughter a heifer for sacrifice for my sins, or for somebody's sins, or whatever, right? And then call Jesse to the sacrifice with you. So that way you're worshiping me. So who is God making this about? Saul chasing Samuel because he's going to do something that God told Samuel to do? Or who is he making it about? He says, make it about me. God says, make it about me. Go sacrifice to me.
He doesn't even address Saul.
He doesn't even address Saul. 1 Samuel 16, 2. And so he says,
Too late. Go for it.
yeah, no, you guys, a couple minutes, but you're good. So he says, I hear you. I hear what you're saying, Samuel. I'm not even worried about Saul. Go down there and go worship me with Jesse. You guys go down there and have a church service. And while you're talking to him, then you can go to his house and you can go meet his sons, because that's what I got the plan, right? I'm not worried about Saul. You're worried about Saul. I'm not worried about Saul. Do you see that? God's not concerned about Saul. So it says, and you will anoint for me him who I tell you. So he says, you're going to go to his sons, to Jesse and his sons, and then whichever one of the sons, I'm going to tell you, that's the one who's going to be king. All right? Easy enough. So Samuel did. Verse 4, Samuel did that which the Lord spoke and came to Bethlehem. The elders of the town trembled at his coming and said, do you come in peace? Why do you think that they would ask such a weird question? Why are the elders of the town worried if Samuel's coming to town?
Because they know he's split from Saul.
Well, it could be that the Samuel and Saul feud, right? Samuel and Saul feud may have something to do with that. I guess that's a possibility.
And he
Okay.
just hacked somebody.
He just hacked up the leader of the Amalekites, right? So, Agag is dead, right? Agag is dead. Okay. Also, Samuel, is he going with God or against God? He's going with God. So if you are fearful of what a man of God's coming to you, what does that likely say about you?
You're not following the Lord. Not following the Lord. Yeah.
You could be on shaky ground yourself, right? So we'll just call it shaky ground for themselves. And it doesn't really give us any one particular deal, but these are the kind of things that we like to flesh out as we read through the scriptures, right? So this is saying, was this man of God's coming to our town? No, we got all the prostitutes at the temple. We got, whatever. I don't know what it is, but whatever it was, he's like, oh man, this guy's going to come find out. He's going to see are you coming in peace? Are you coming to hang out with us? Are you coming to Agag's dead? What are we doing here? Right. And so verse 5, and he said, I have come in peace to sacrifice to the Lord. Whew! You can see them just going, oh yeah, well come on in, man. We got a great town here, and look at the market over here. We got all sorts of produce, and right. And he consecrate yourselves and come with me to the sacrifice. So Samuel does something amazing here. Do you catch what he does? Let's read that again. In verse 5, and he said, I have come in peace to sacrifice to the Lord. So who's it about? Is it about them and their stuff? Who's it about? The Lord. And then, what does he say to them?
Clean yourselves and come in.
That's right. Go clean yourselves. Go wipe your face. Wash your hands. Get your new clothes on. Y'all come with me. Let's go worship God together. He's not worried about what they're worried about. He's trying to bring them to the presence of God. That's huge. How many times do we show up and we're like, man, I don't really want to talk with Brian right now because Brian's mad at me because I didn't, do that, and he's
smiling again out to help me.
He asked me to help him move his couch, and whatever, and so I've been ignoring his phone calls for the past 6 weeks because I don't want to help him move his couch, But instead of going to you and saying, and you're like, hey, are you gonna help me move this couch? Instead of doing that, you're like, okay, are you coming here to just hang out, or are you coming to help me? And I was like, I'm here to worship God. I may help you with your couch. I don't know, but I'm here to worship God.
His top priority was there.
His top priority, right? I'm not worried about all y'all stuff.
Right.
Let's worship God, okay? So Samuel that was 5. Yeah, so... and so the second half of verse 5, he says, and he consecrated Jesse and his sons and called them to the sacrifice. So he's got like a revival service going on down there in Bethlehem. Come on down. We got a tent set up and everything. We got a revival service. Chapter 16, verse 6. When they came, he looked on Eliab and said, surely the anointed of the Lord is before him. It's like this dude, Eliab, right? So let's write down some names here. So we've got Eliab, and he's the oldest. And when Samuel sees him, he's like, that dude right there, all-American football hero. I'm telling you, that guy right there, he could throw a football over the mountains, right? That's got to be the one, God, right?
That's Uncle Rico.
But he's like, this has got to be the one. And so it says, God, is this it? Is it Eliab? Eliab the one? Verse 7, but the Lord said to Samuel, do not look at his appearance or the height of his stature, how tall he is and how built he is, because I've rejected him as king. It doesn't mean I've rejected him as a human being. Samuel's there to find the king, right? So it says that I've rejected him as king. For the Lord sees not as man sees. For man, you and I, we look on the outward appearance and say, hey, you've got a bald head. You're beautiful just like I am, right? I love having, someone else who's got no hair on top of their head. Because
are you implying that God's image is, the guy has
I'm just saying,
I was being born in his image, is all I'm trying to say.
Maybe God put hair on there to cover some of y'all's heads, is what I'm going to say.
I'm just saying, I'm born in his image.
I don't think God's fault, but I wouldn't know.
We know he didn't have hair. Whatever.
Yeah. Anyway, you get my point. So, but man looks at the outward appearance, right? We see the wrinkles. We see the love handles. We see all the stuff, right? We see the limp, of somebody. We see these things. But God doesn't look like that, right? But the Lord looks on the heart. The end of verse 7 there. The Lord looks on the heart. So whether you wear glasses or you have 20/20 vision, or you're super fit, or you're really fat, or you're bald, or you're hairy, God doesn't care about that stuff in relation to who you are inside. Because you can gain weight and lose weight, right? I can grow hair and then I can shave it off. Like there's things that are transient about my body. But who I am inside is really something that can't be changed, at least not easily. And normally it's not in a good way. Normally when we change ourselves, it's based on our sin nature. All right? So God is looking on the inside. What are you about? Are you helping other people? Are you loving others? Are you serving others?
One of the scriptures said he knows the motives of our hearts.
He does, yeah. So let's go to verse 8. Here we are in verse 8. Then Jesse called Abinadab. So, let's call another brother here. Abinadab. Do what?
My version of this says
Abinadab. And Jesse made him walk before Samuel. And he said, neither has the Lord chosen this one. So, I mean, this is like, hey, we got Eliab, the All-American. We have Abinadab, top, maybe all district. Not All-American, maybe he's all district, right? Then Jesse made Shema to pass by. Shema to pass by. So let's see here. Shema. So Jesse, and neither has the Lord chosen this one. So this was, he was a starter on the team, but he wasn't all district, but he was a starter. Okay. Then Jesse made 7 of his sons pass before Samuel. And Samuel said to Jesse, the Lord's not chosen these. So we've got 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And I don't know what the names are because it doesn't say. Okay.
But 7 of his sons, obviously.
7 of his sons. And God kept saying, and you can see Samuel going, okay, maybe he was too good looking, maybe he was too athletic, maybe he was too smart. What about this? What about this brother here? Surely, this guy's like a regular Joe. I mean, surely this guy. Nope, not him either. So in verse 10 here, Jesse made 7 of his sons pass before Samuel, and Samuel said to Jesse, the Lord has not chosen these. And so verse 11, Samuel said to Jesse, are these all of your young men? Are these all your sons here? You don't have anybody else? Why would he continue to ask the question?
No, we've got a big one.
God said you're going to anoint somebody who's the son of Jesse.
I feel like when God asks the questions, I mean, it clears omnipotence. You know what I'm saying? When he asks a question, he knows the answer. I don't know why he's asking for.
Well, he wants us to think.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I'm saying there's some motive behind it.
Is there anybody else here?
Yeah.
Anybody else? All you young men. And he said, well, there remains yet the youngest. And there he is, shepherding the flock. See him? See a little dot way out there with all the white dots? That's him. He's over there. And then Samuel said to Jesse, send for him, bring him back, for we will not sit down until he comes here. Like, oh man, it's going to be 20, 30 minutes from him, walk across the pasture or whatever it is. We'll wait. We'll wait. Okay. So then Samuel said, just send for him, and then we'll wait. We'll stay until he comes here. So verse 12. So he sent and brought him in. Now he was ruddy with beautiful eyes and a good appearance. Ruddy is kind of tan. He's kind of tan. He's got beautiful eyes. He's out running around the sheep. He's got like those nice muscular tones in his body. Like
one of those firemen in the calendar sheep thing.
Yeah, maybe he's not a bad looking little guy there, right? Now he's the youngest one, so maybe he's a little smaller in stature. I don't know. We tend to think that he's probably in his early to mid teens during this time.
Young man at most, as far as
Yeah.
He's definitely not old, as you're saying.
Probably junior high or high school age.
Yeah, so boyish.
Boyish, but man-ish, right?
I like it how he's a shepherd too. That wasn't a huge.
Yeah, it wasn't, and it wasn't prestigious. That's right. He wasn't like in the rabbi training track. He wasn't in like, this. He was, I don't know, I got the sheep, right?
Would that be like in today's society, like a janitor kind of?
Maybe, yeah, kind of like that. What we would think is a lower class,
yeah, exactly.
right? Exactly. And so he sent for him, brought him. He was ruddy with beautiful eyes and a good appearance. And the Lord said, that's the one. Arise, anoint him, for this is he. Then Samuel took the horn of oil and anointed him in the midst of his brothers, and the Spirit of the Lord came on David from that day forward. So Samuel arose and went to Ramah. So we see here, David is the one so there's 7 brothers. The 8th brother, David, here gets called as the future. I said David instead of David.
You know what you meant.
David.
I got.
Yeah.
And not just in this family. I think in any family, you're in a large family like that, and they pick, and the Lord chooses the most, like you're saying, insignificant one. Wouldn't that cause jealousy among the
So that's a great question. So
brothers are brothers anyway, right?
no, but I'm saying that would cause jealousy.
that's a great question. I'm gonna actually explore that just for a moment here. I'm gonna actually explore that for just a moment. Let me erase my board. This eraser is.
Especially when I think he's not. My point is, they don't feel like he's worthy to be chosen. I mean, if he was higher up on the, like Brad was saying, prestigious on the prestige of his career, calling or whatever.
So let me see here if you can follow what I'm doing. So this is. Anybody know what that is? Morse code.
Oh wow! Okay.
I was like, I should know it.
And do you know what it means? It means SOS. Now it could be dash 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 dot dot dot, but I think it's dot 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 dash dash dash. Okay. It means save our ship. And it actually doesn't mean save our ship. It means something else. But we always say save our ship. It actually means like save, overboard, something. I can't remember. There's actually a whole phrase that's with it. Save our ship, right? So if 911 of the day, right? So when you're dialing a phone number, so let's just say 911, right? Because that's even better. Okay, I'm glad. Thanks for bringing that up. So let's say here that we've got, if you're in the movies, everything's 555, right?
Yeah, fake.
9117. That's a phone number here. What does your eyes get drawn to?
5, 7, 8.
What do your eyes get drawn to?
911.
Hey, you see 911 in there, don't you? Okay? That's because that's a repeated pattern that we've been trained to look for in our lives. That's the emergency phone number, right? So just work with me for a second here. What we see is we go all the way back to Genesis. All the way back to Genesis. Remember that? It's been years now. Go back to Genesis, and you start looking at the story of Joseph. What can you tell me about the story of Joseph?
He has a coat of many colors. And
Yeah, he's got the coat.
Youngest brother? Yeah, youngest brother. Good point. Good point. Oh, I knew there was a similarity there somewhere.
So he's the youngest. And then what happens to Joseph?
He gets sold off into slavery by his brothers.
Yeah, so he gets sold into slavery, right? And then what happens to him?
Put in charge of many things.
There you go. Good call.
That's right. He gets put in, he's in second in command over all of Egypt.
That's right.
Does God choose the oldest, wisest, most wealthy, most intelligent son to do something? What does he choose?
Wherever you want.
The runt. He calls the small one the young one. Okay? Why would he do that?
Because he can.
Not just that.
God doesn't call the equipped, he equips the called.
That's true.
Because he's going to show how powerful he is if you just hang out with him.
Because then it's not about Joseph and his, I'm the firstborn, I get a double portion of inheritance, I have extra time, training, wisdom. Yeah, no, it has nothing to do with that. Anything successful in Joseph's life has to do with God interacting in his life. He takes the unqualified and he qualifies them. Okay? He takes the least and he makes them the most. So we go back to David. Of David's clan, he doesn't use Eliah, but now Samuel, he says, that's all-American right there. That's got to be the one, right, God? Nope. God says, come on, we got a pattern here. Come on, let's go through it. We got a pattern here. Jesus, go all the way to the New Testament. He was born in Jerusalem to a well-to-do family, very rich. Parents were in places of power and prestige and influence. And wait. What happened then?
Yeah, he chose a 14-year-old Mary to
Out of wedlock.
To marry a carpenter, which was not obviously.
Just to have the baby in a cave.
Yeah, exactly.
Instead of in a house. I mean, do you see what God does there? He continually finds ways to make the littlest the most. That's a pattern.
That's right.
Does everyone see that now? Okay. So we got David here, and David has just been anointed. Now, David is probably just old enough to be like, wait, what's happening again? You're doing? Wait a minute, what?
He's probably a little surprised.
He's probably a little surprised. He's probably a little bit like, can I go back and play my video game now? Like I need to go back to the fields out there. I was practicing my slingshot, shooting rocks with my slingshot or whatever he was doing, right? And how many different dynasties, how many different kings have we had in Israel?
One. He's the first one. Right?
One. Saul was the first one. And he's the second one.
What was he king for, 30, 40 years or something?
Yeah, probably about 30. Saul was king for about 30 years. But here's the deal, and we'll look at that later in 1 Samuel, 2 Samuel.
Skipping ahead.
You're skipping ahead. But here's the deal. It's the second dude to be anointed as king over Israel. So it's not like there's some sort of long-standing practice.
That's true.
And so David, you can see David being like, this dude just poured oil all over. What in the world's going on? You're the next king of Israel. And he's like,
Probably a little confused, right?
what? Yeah. I mean, put yourself in his shoes, okay?
Plus, like we discussed, he was not the one that anybody would think that God would choose.
He wasn't ugly. He didn't look like Brian, or you know.
No, but I'm saying like he's a shepherd boy. Like
Yeah, he wasn't anything special, right? Okay, so now let's go to 16. We'll go to verse 14. Okay. Now the Spirit of the Lord departed from Saul, and an evil spirit from the Lord terrified him. Well, some of you got different versions. What does yours say?
I read your version wrong.
Yeah.
It says, but the Spirit of the Lord departed from Saul, and a distressing spirit from the Lord troubled him.
Uh-huh.
Same. Yeah.
Is that what you said? Okay.
So we see in verse 13 that he poured the oil on, and the Spirit of the Lord came on David. In verse 14, it came out of Saul. The Spirit of the Lord came out of Saul. And it wasn't just that the Holy Spirit came out of Saul, but an evil spirit from the Lord terrified him. So this is one of the ones where I called a buddy of mine and just said, hey, this is what I'm thinking when I'm reading this passage here. This is what I'm feeling. This is kind of where I'm seeing this going. Am I way off base? He goes, no, you're on the right track of mine. Okay. So let me ask you this question. Is God evil?
That's right to the very phrase of it. I mean, no. So that's
No, but
that verse confuses me.
I think he allows things to happen for his purpose, like his purpose of your calling.
Absolutely.
I mean,
Well, yeah.
he's allowed me to go through things that I would never want to go
That's
through.
right.
But
He
just
uses unbeliever, bad people as his tools to help whatever.
Absolutely. That's right.
The devil.
But how many times do we say, oh man, this bad thing is happening in my life. God, how can you let this happen to me? Right? We'll think to ourselves.
It's like the scripture says, what the devil means for evil, the Lord uses for good. Like,
correct.
I feel like he can use that, whatever the devil wants to try to take you out.
That's right.
Use it for cool.
Did you get it figured out?
Yep. There's 4 houses out.
Oh, man.
Me and next door, and then the 2 behind me.
Oh, man.
Your wife was out there taking care of Marcia, though.
Okay, good.
I got my.
All right, so we're in chapter 16,
We're on verse what?
verse 15.
15, right on.
So the servants of Saul said to him, see, an evil spirit from God troubles you. Let our Lord now tell your servants who are before you, that they might seek out a man experienced in playing the lyre, playing the harp. And it will come to pass when the evil spirit from God is on you, that he will play with his hand, and you will be well. So his servants that are in the king's court, which how many years have we had this like prestigious king's court thing going on here?
30, right?
Well, not at this point. Saul's still pretty new. I mean, he's a couple.
Right.
He's
Skipping ahead again.
yeah, you're skipping. He's a year or 2, or maybe 3 years in on this thing. So it's not like, but somehow these servants of Saul weren't just like, that dude's got a distressed spirit about him. He's really in a bad way. Man, we need to get him like some antidepressants. We need to get him some Prozac. We need to get him some, whatever. We'll throw some essential oils in the diffuser. Let's do the whole thing, or whatever it is.
To cheer him up, right?
They said, we need to cheer him up. So let's play some music. So they pulled out, their old George Strait CD and put out the Van Halen, and they said, you need to hear some music. That'll make you feel better. And so they said, Saul said to his servants, find me now a man that can play well and bring him to me. Find somebody then. If you think it's going to help me, go find him. All right, do it. So here we are in verse 18. Then one from the servants answered and said, I've seen, by the way. You know how we do that? We're like, man, I really could go for some waffles right now. Everybody knows, oh, dude, you got to go over here to this place. I'm telling you, they got the best waffles, and they put like crumbles of bacon inside of it. It's fantastic. It's the best thing, right? Like we do that, right? Like we need someone who plays the harp. He's like, I know a guy. I know a dude. He plays the harp. And actually, he's the son of Jesse the Bethlehemite. He's the son of Jesse the Bethlehemite.
Call me out next week. I have my harp with me. Whatever.
Special music this Sunday by Bradford. And who is experienced in playing music, a mighty man of valor, a man of battle, and skillful in words, and even a man of fine appearance. and the Lord is with him. Oh, it's almost like a little dig there.
Yep.
Saul just had the Holy Spirit come off of him. It's like, I got a guy. He's really good. He's good looking. I mean,
God still loves him. What?
and God still loves him. God's still with him. I mean, I'm like, wait a second here. But therefore, verse 19, therefore Saul sent messengers to Jesse and said, send me David your son, who is with the sheep. So hold on a second here. So we've got Jesse the Bethlehemite. Now, prior to chapter 16, did we see Jesse anywhere else in the Bible? No. No. He just pops up out of nowhere. Okay? And all of a sudden, he got visited by Samuel. Come worship with me. We're going to worship. We're going to sacrifice this heifer. We're going to have a meal together. And I'm going to anoint one of your sons. It's going to be the new king. I mean, Jesse is like, man, is this like, a sweepstakes clearinghouse, with the big check that will come to my door? What's going on here, right? But then you hear Saul, who the nation of Israel sees him falling from grace, falling into madness. And he gets a messenger, and it says, Saul sent a messenger to Jesse and said, send me David your son, who's with the sheep. What is he doing now? It's like, oh, man. He was just anointed as king, and I've got to send him to be with the other king who's current king, but he's obviously not going to be king for some point. And he's kind of mad. He's kind of crazy. Not mad like angry, but mad like cuckoo.
That's right.
So I'm going to send my son, who just got anointed king, to go be with that bad king. It's like sending your son to go hang out with the neighborhood bully.
Right. That's true. Not a good idea.
So Jesse took a donkey laden with bread, a bottle of wine, and a young goat, and he sent them with his son David to Saul. Why didn't he just pack a bag for David and send him on his way?
Because his youngest son wants to be there.
Why did he send him the donkey heavy laden with bread, a bottle of wine, and a young goat?
Is that what the Lord told him to do?
I don't think so.
Oh, okay.
I think Jesse was saying, David comes in peace. David comes with gifts. I got bread.
Yeah. That's a good point.
I've got wine. I've got a goat. Have a fattened feast on my dime, King Saul. Be nice to David.
So was Saul aware that David was going to replace him?
Not yet.
Or is he
But
okay.
No, that's a good point.
But you got to think too. I mean, how many of those families where there's the hierarchy, the first son, the second son, third son, and maybe the third son kills the second son, so he could get part of the inheritance.
No, that's been happening for
And this is happening, way before.
years. People killing people for.
And so even though it's the first king, they may be thinking, this guy might want to kill you knowing you're going to be the second king. If he figures this out,
Yeah.
he's going to want to kill you. So we're going to let him know. That's why he probably,
Yeah.
That's a good
Yeah.
point.
I'm coming. I come in peace. I come.
I didn't think about that.
Yeah.
I think that's why, one of the reasons I think Alexander the Great never named his successor, right? He didn't want someone ready to take his place and he didn't think he was going to die at such a young age.
Yeah.
That's a good point. I never thought about that.
He never thought he was going to up and die all of a sudden.
Yeah.
He was fighting in wars all the
Because he
time.
passed away when he was fairly young.
Yeah,
right?
all of a sudden, yeah. Sick or whatever. They probably
Good
poisoned
point.
him, who knows.
Verse 21. David came to Saul and stood before him, and Saul loved him greatly, and he became his armor bearer. Now, have you ever seen a hermit crab outside of its shell? Does it look really strong and sturdy? Outside of its shell? It looks kind of like a shrimp.
yeah.
Oh, really? So it needs that shell.
It needs that shell to look tough. You can like paint the shells and whatever, little hermit crabs.
When I picture a crab, I picture the shell. And that's the whole
No,
deal.
not the big crab, not the crab. The hermit crabs, the little tiny ones. You can buy them at the pet store, and they're like in little shells. And the kids paint the shells and stuff, whatever. And then they keep growing and growing and growing, and they have to get bigger shells to whatever. And eventually they just die because they're disgusting creatures. But
Yeah, that's one that.
but without the shell, it's nothing more than like a kind of like a shrimp.
We used to like a little crustacean.
Yeah, it's a little crustacean thing. The shell is what gives it its ability to present itself as a formidable defense or offense, and it protects him. So when you see here, David came to Saul and stood before him, and Saul loved him greatly and became his armor bearer. You see now, David is now interacting on such a level, serving the king, that he's around the king when he doesn't have his shell on, doesn't have his armor on.
Wow, that's pretty impressive.
If David had bad intentions like you guys were talking about,
He wouldn't have been allowed around the king.
or he would have taken him out.
Or that too, yeah.
Right? So David was trusted. David kept his integrity intact, because he very easily could have seen, hey, King Saul's down to his tighty whities, and I'm helping him put his armor on to go to battle or whatever. I could very easily either embarrass or take this guy out.
Yeah, for sure.
But he didn't. Okay, so I want to make sure we point that out. Verse 22, Saul sent to Jesse, saying, "Let David stand before me, for he has found favor in my sight." So he's saying to Jesse, the dad, remember? He's saying, you know what? I really like David. David gets me. He's nice. He plays the harp that helps with my fits. He's trustworthy. He's agreeable. I'm going to keep him. I'm extending his stay. He's going to be here for a while. Okay? So just know that he's going to be here. In verse 23, it happened that when the evil spirit from God came on Saul, David would take the lyre, the harp, in his hand and play. And so Saul was refreshed and was well, and the evil spirit departed from him. So, what do we see happening? We see I'm going to draw it here. Do you remember that commercial from the 80s where he talked about, I do more drugs so I can make more money? So I can do more drugs. Remember that whole thing? Right?
I was a toddler in those years, so.
So we see
I
Saul.
was born in that decade. I don't remember it that well.
So we see Saul, and he has fits, right? And then he plays the lyre. David does. And they connect. He has even greater affection. Man, that David guy, that's my boy, David. He's a good guy, right? This David, man, he's taking care of me. All the while, what does David know in the back of his head?
That he's his replacement.
Yeah, that he's a successor to King Saul.
Oh boy. This is the foundation for some potential drama.
Oh, yeah. You're right about that.
Some foundation for potential drama. So what we have to see is who put this drama in place. No. The Lord did. Even Samuel asked the question. Go all the way back, 16, go all the way back up here to verse 2. 1 Samuel 16, verse 2. What does he say?
How can I go?
How can I go? If Saul hears about it, he's going to kill me. So we already know, we already have this in our head from the beginning, from this Bible study tonight, that Saul's not going to take lightly. Oh, God's going to call this other dude. Oh, okay. Well, you know what? I'm just going to just take the crown and go ahead and take it.
Either way,
he's chosen as king when he's a bigger, handsome guy, Saul. Not even gonna lie, he wouldn't.
No, but he was bigger among his people. Bigger among the people. Yeah.
Bigger, you're coming to take someone's kingship. I don't know.
Yeah, but you're not going to see Saul and be like, "Hey, congratulations, David, you're the next king." Oh yeah, here's the crown. Hey, good job, buddy. Yeah, woo! No, you're not going to, especially when you're in a bad way, and especially when you have the Holy Spirit is now off of you, and you're not being distressed by an evil spirit. Yeah. So he's not going to take lightly to that. Samuel in verse 2, he sees it ahead of time.
That's right.
But God's orchestrating this. Again, like you were saying, what the devil means for evil, God means for good. God will work it for good. Does that mean it's going to be perfect to us? Does that mean it's going to be stress-free and easy for us? Does it mean we're not going to have any scars when we come out the other side? No. It just means the end result will be exactly what God desires for it. So when you're struggling through a situation, God may be taking you through that. So there's kind of two sides here. One is we live in a fallen world. Lightning catches trees on fire. Tornadoes, form on the ground. People get cancer. Whatever it is. There's terrible stuff in the world because we're in a fallen world. God created it to be perfect, and because of sin, it's just falling apart. So there's that side of it, and there's also I'm choosing to do the incorrect thing. I'm choosing to do the thing I shouldn't be doing. And so I have consequences for my choices. And there's also where it's like double jeopardy, where it's like both of those things. I'm choosing to do bad things, so I'm choosing to eat a diet of McDonald's every day for my entire life, and I live in a world that has cancer as a result of the fall. So I'm having terrible health, and I get cancer at the same time, or whatever. So you can get it's a double whammy. Okay, so the whole point of it is we know David. Like if you've been to church at all, David. Later on, what's going to happen with David? A little foreshadowing. Yeah, he kills Goliath, and all right, there's some cool stuff coming. So that's on the horizon, but we also see God is setting it up in an unconventional, kind of to us, chaotic way that doesn't make sense to us, but it makes sense to Him. God may be letting you go through something in your life. It makes sense to Him, but He knows what the outcome is going to be. We see that with Saul and David starting right here. Now, there's going to be some bad stuff as we go through these next, few chapters together. Next week, we're going to actually talk about David and Goliath. So that's going to be fun. And there's going to be some cool stuff. I'll have a few pictures for you on the website. I'll put them on there for that one. But there's some things in that story that maybe you don't even know because you've just been taught the Sunday school version. So David's going to become king, just not yet. So God knows. God already. It's like when you pull an arrow back and you let it go. The arrow has to fly through the air before it hits the target. God has already pulled the arrow back and said, "David, you're the king." So it's flying. It hasn't hit the target yet, but it's on its way. It's on its way.
Well,
All right.
At this point, David's still a boy anyway, though, right?
He's still a young boy.
So, he's like 14. He's king right now. Who knows what would happen?
Yeah.
Well, God's one. He's going somewhere good, like internship kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Which is good.
And he maybe can learn what not to do by being in Saul's court.
Yep.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm going to also say this. He could also learn some bad habits while he's in there as well, because we know Saul's. Who we hang out with a lot of times can define who we are.
Yeah, the scripture says bad morals corrupt good character or something, whatever that.
Bad company corrupts good morals. Yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's chapter 16. Be back next week for chapter 17.
I thought it was pretty cool.